Let's break down the latest developments around the Clarity Act and the state of crypto regulations, because things are getting heated. Brad Garlinghouse has stepped up recently, suggesting that the banks need to show good faith to move things forward. But let's rewind a bit. Remember back to last year when Trump proposed the idea of a U.S. crypto strategic reserve? It was back on March the 2nd, and the big target was to push the Clarity Act through Congress by August 2025. Well, here we are, March 2026, and nothing has really moved forward. So why the delay? A lot of it boils down to one issue. The White House is still considering backing the banks in regard to stablecoin yields. Many argue that the situation isn't as clear as it seems, and it's creating more confusion in Washington. One of the main figures in this saga, Patrick Witt, made an early claim that the legislation would be passed by March 1st, but that prediction has crumbled. There's been a lot of failed attempts to push this through, and now we're stuck in a deadlock between banks and crypto. Then, Brad Garlinghouse, CEO of Ripple, threw out his thoughts on the matter. He believes the deal is still up for grabs, but it's up to the banks to step up and act in good faith. He's not wrong. There's an ongoing tug of war where crypto is giving way, but it's clear the banks need to respond in kind. Interestingly, figures like David Sachs and even Patrick Witt have been vocal in their support for crypto. Sachs, for example, acknowledged that crypto has made significant concessions on stablecoin yields, and now it's the bank's turn to reciprocate. So the question becomes, are people like Sachs and Witt shifting toward crypto, or is there another factor at play? To dig deeper, I wanted to bring in someone who knows the DC scene inside and out, Adam Minhardt, the head of public policy at Chainlink, who's been in the game for over a decade. Let's pivot to Polymarket for a moment, because things are getting interesting there. For a while, we saw the probabilities bouncing all over the place, but over the weekend, we saw a huge spike, shooting up to 70%. What's behind this sudden jump? Is it just the latest political shifts, or is something bigger brewing in DC right now? This situation is far from over, and we at a crucial point where the next few months could define the future of crypto regulation in the US.
I think you're seeing real traction in some of these White House-led meetings, and I think you're starting to see a thaw between the banks. Saw that with Patrick Witt's response to the Sandra Lutz tweet. I think you're starting to see the political pressure come to bear here. We know the White House wants a deal very, very much. A lot of time from a lot of very, very senior people have been put into this. It's extremely rare to see that in DC on anything, let alone a bill like this. So a lot of people have put real political skin in the game. I think that's starting to bear on the process. And I think we're starting to see the sides come together. No one wants to see this thing blow up. And we do have to remember that banks, ironically, need the crypto deal. They need to, they need to do something about the genius loophole that they call it. So,
well, I mean, you've been in DC for what, 15 years or something?
30.
30. Okay, I undersold you.
Have we ever seen something like this before? A situation so clear where the president himself is pushing for something, yet it's taking this long to get anywhere? I mean, we're really talking about an issue that was been on the table since March of last year. The president made it clear he wanted this done, but here we are, still waiting. What's the holdup? Is it the sheer power of the banks that's been able to stall everything? It's a tough question, but the influence of big financial institutions cannot be underestimated. They've played a huge role in blocking progress and maintaining their control.
I think this has been one of the more unique processes we've seen. I think you're seeing real traction in some of these White House-led meetings, and I think you're starting to see a thaw between the banks. Saw that with Patrick Witt's response to the Sandra Lutz tweet. I think you're starting to see the political pressure come to bear here. We know the White House wants a deal very, very much. A lot of time from a lot of very, very senior people have been put into this. It's extremely rare to see that in DC on anything, let alone a bill like this. So a lot of people have put real political skin in the game. I think that's starting to bear on the process. And I think we're starting to see the sides come together. No one wants to see this thing blow up. And we do have to remember that banks, ironically, need the crypto deal. They need to, they need to do something about the genius loophole that they call it. So,
well, I mean, you've been in DC for what, 15 years or something?
30.
30. Okay, I undersold you.
Do you think setting that March 1st deadline was a massive mistake by the White House? It certainly seems like it. Placing such a tight deadline only added pressure, and when that date came and went with nothing to show for it, it left many questioning the whole approach. Maybe it was a bit too ambitious, or perhaps it was just unrealistic given the complexities of the situation. Either way, it's hard to deny that it didn't help matters.
I think deadlines, they're often missed in the city, but they're a forcing mechanism.
Yeah.
And I think it signals from the highest levels that we want something done by this time frame. So I think what that deadline did is it got people to the table multiple times, like physically together, which is an accomplishment in the city.
Right.
And it also led to a lot of calls downtown amongst banks, amongst crypto, because there was a deadline. So it was a really good forcing mechanism. Was the deadline met? No. Is it a big deal? Not in my opinion. I think we're still very, very close. And I think without a deadline, we probably wouldn't be as close as we are right now.
All right. So how close do you think we are?
I think within the next 2 weeks, we're going to see something.
In March. Okay. All right.
I think in March we see something. Now, I'm not to say it's going to be a deal that everybody likes, but I think it's a deal that will be made, and they're going to try to push.
Adam, you can't say I think it's not going to be a deal that ever. What do you mean by that?
I think on one side you have exchanges which very much want to pay yield on static reserves, and on the other hand you have banks who don't want them to be able to do that. So something's going to have to give on each side. I don't expect either one to fully win this completely. I think there's going to be concessions made. I'm not sure where the lines are going to be drawn, if there's going to be some permissible payment on some type of balances, not just transactions, which is what's been discussed and what was the basis for the also Brooks-Tillis amendment before the markup got pulled last time. So I think we're going to see something that makes the banks partially happy and makes the exchanges partially happy.
That definitely raises some concerns. When we see things moving this slowly, it often results in some sort of messy, half-baked solution, which is exactly what the markets don't need. I was watching closely when this popped up last week, and we even did a full video on it. It was a post from the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, OCC, referencing the implementation of the Genius Act for stablecoin issuance. We took a deep dive into it, and it's clear now that the OCC is stepping in with more guidance, but the question is, who exactly is pushing them to make these moves? The OCC is supposed to be this independent government body, but something's clearly influencing their actions. What's really driving this?
To do it. My sense is they did not want to create the firestorm they have created. I think we're seeing issuers and exchanges alike be extremely confused, is putting it lightly. I think very concerned is probably the right word here, that the OCC is going to take the step to close the loophole as it is. I think they looked at that bill, they read the language, and they tried to interpret it the best they could. I think I expect the comment period to be extremely meaningful here. Under APA, all comments have to be read, taken into account in some way. I'd expect, my read on this is I expect some modification when we move to a final rule here. I don't think we're going to see this draft rule end up in final form, is my guess.
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, the timing just seems very...
The timing here is definitely suspicious, don't you think? You're saying it's Congress, but honestly, I'm having a hard time believing they're behind this. Congress hasn't been able to get anything done for ages, so how could they suddenly have the power to push something like this? My gut tells me this is coming straight from the White House. Whether it's driven by figures like Sachs or Patrick Witt, the timing is uncanny. It all drops just a day before the whole situation starts to escalate. Something about this doesn't sit right, Adam. I've got a bad feeling about it, honestly. This doesn't smell good at all.
Instances don't happen in this city, and the idea that you'd have the national bank regulator basically take the bank's interpretation of the Genius Act and put it into a proposed reg.
Yes. But not buying that one. Not buying that.
Yep.
It's a dirty pool somewhere is going on there in D.C. My question is, who is the pool master here? That's what I want to know.
I mean,
who could it be?
You know, the community banks have always been a force. Now, the OCC is not the regulator of community banks. The OCC is national banks, so the bigger guys. Mm-hmm. But I will say the political force within the banking industry, and I used to work for Citigroup, and was part of all these trade associations. The community banks are located in every senator's state, in every members of Congress hometown. They likely go to barbecues with the members and senators. They've been they've been part of these members of Congress's community in a real way for a long time. And there's lots of employees. Yeah. So the community banks have a real tangible grassroots network. A lot of folks in this town say they have one, but they don't. And I would say community banks really, really do. These senators and members of Congress, House members, they likely know the president of the bank in their towns where they live. So there's really strong, deep personal connections.
Yeah, but these guys are really good at using it.
You've got big players like JP Morgan Chase and others at the top, right? And they're really starting to dominate, taking chunks out of regional and community banks. But here's where it gets interesting. If I'm being honest, I'd think that this situation might actually give community banks a chance to grow, especially in the crypto space. They could use this as an opportunity to offer services like holding digital assets. Why wouldn't that level the playing field for them? It seems like a perfect moment for community banks to find their footing and compete with these giants. But the real question is, why isn't anyone making that move? Why aren't they using it as an advantage?
It looks like a more national type product. So I think if you're going to enter the crypto market as a bank, I think it feels like the bigger players, the GSIBs, the Citis, the JP Morgans, are likely to issue a stablecoin or a tokenized deposit product. And that can cross borders, cross states, be a national instrument, where I think for the community banks, I think they're feeling that they're a much more localized operation and don't see it. Now, there have been talks about a consortium stablecoin across small and mid-size banks that they could accept all. I think there's opportunity there. Deposit flight is already happening to big banks. And we already saw the money market mutual fund scare after 2007-8, where the banks were very concerned that money market mutual funds were going to suck up deposits.
But here's the crazy part. That's not what happened. Instead of community banks stepping into this opportunity, we're watching the major banks crush earnings year after year. Have you looked at the numbers recently? Bank profits have been exploding. And then you look at companies like Circle reporting huge performance just last week. This entire space is clearly generating serious money. So you can't tell me there is an opportunity here. We've actually had community banks on the show before. 3 years ago, Vast Bank out of Tulsa was trying to break into crypto. They weren't some Wall Street giant. They were as local and community focused as it gets. They genuinely tried to offer crypto services to their customers. And what happened? They basically got smacked down by the regulatory environment at the time. They had to pull back. They had to step away from crypto almost completely because of how hostile the climate became under the previous administration. Now, fast forward to today, there's clearly a window opening again. If there was ever a moment for a bank like Vast to step back in and compete, this would be it. This isn't just about big banks anymore. This could be a real growth opportunity for smaller institutions if they're actually allowed to participate. I don't see people rushing to buy stablecoins and throw them into a crypto wallet. It's just not happening. These are people who are loyal to their banks. They've been banking there for years, and they're not about to make a drastic change just like that. I know these people. Heck, my own mother, my mother-in-law, they're in the same boat, so we already know what the situation is there. But hey, I want to shift gears for a second. I've got a clip I want to play for you. It's from Charles Hoskinson, and he touches on a concern that has been on the minds of a lot of folks in the crypto community. It's all about retail investors. Take a look at this.
Armstrong from Coinbase is kind of positioning himself to be like on behalf of retail.
Why didn't they fight for the developer protections, developers? In fact, they had incentives to regulate the DeFi products so they don't get competition from the DEXs. And at some point, they're the ones who are going to be advocating to ban non-custodial wallets and to make every transaction KYC inside the system.
I haven't always agreed with Charles Hoskinson, but when he speaks like this, I'm definitely on board. He's all about protecting self-custody, and honestly, that's something we all need to care about. Then, when he dives into the whole DeFi space, that's where my concern really kicks in. I'm worried that they're going to try to control the code, and we know where that path leads. We've already seen it play out before, and it's not pretty. So, Adam, how close are we to seeing any of this actually happen?
Unhosted wallets, which I consider kind of the third rail of crypto policy, I feel like we're in a good spot. I don't think anyone is seriously talking about applying the Bank Secrecy Act, KYC, AML to unhosted wallets. I think the issue of software developers and code is a live issue. And after stablecoin and yield, I would say DeFi in general and the protections afforded to software developers is probably the most challenging issue to solve. there's a bill called the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act that Tom Emmer wrote and passed the House. That bill would provide a safe harbor for software developers against criminal prosecution.
Yeah.
That bill is in the base text of the Senate bill right now, and there's hope that that stays in. There's a specific reference that the DeFi industry and most of us in crypto really, really support, and that's a reference to a criminal statute, Section 1960 of a Justice Department statute that would specifically exempt them from further criminal prosecution for the failure to register with FinCEN. So including the Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act with a reference to 1960 has become a top tier issue for DeFi and the broader community. The DeFi Education Fund has done a lot of great work on this, did a letter with over 100 signees, I think back in August. So we're fighting for that, but I would say that issue is probably the one that's going to be litigated most after stablecoin and yield. Democrats definitely have a different view of the world on that than Republicans.
Hey, do you think that this skirmish with what's happening in Iran right now is going to possibly derail Clarity in any way?
You know, I don't think so. I mean, the White House has staff devoted to these different spheres of policy. So there's an entire foreign affairs, national security group there that's working on all this. Obviously, you have the Pentagon as well. I don't see concentric circles where the crypto world hits that national security in terms of removing personnel. So I expect us to still to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. I mean, that said, we're seeing prices move up this morning. As a result of that, I think there's a flight to safety here. So we're seeing kind of Bitcoin and these other crypto assets kind of maybe go back to kind of the digital gold narrative, perhaps. But I do think we're going to see continued pressure on this, irrespective.
This is definitely concerning. I'm looking at Rwana's bill coming through, and that could really take the heat off at a critical moment. That vote is right around the corner, just a couple of weeks away, so timing is everything here. But then you've got this situation with Iranian crypto outflows. Honestly, this is like a dream come true for Senator Warren. She's going to love this, isn't she? I wouldn't be surprised if we see her pointing to this as a prime example of how bad actors are using crypto to get out of Iran. Do you think this could cause major issues for crypto moving forward?
From Democrats, that crypto is a primary mechanism for illicit finance and used by our adversaries. It is not to the extent they say it is, but this will certainly fuel that sort of narrative. We saw this with Hamas. We've seen this time and time again. The data shows a very, very low level use. Cash and banks still make up the majority of illicit finance flows. That's continued to be the case, but you're right. This is going to be seized upon them for the very issue we raised before on that Blockchain Regulatory Certainty Act and that 1960 provision of people making technology that can be used by nefarious actors. And where's that line of liability fall? Yeah. So, and I think